People helping
People helping
people.
People helping people globally.
Yeah.
There's that scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I forget it
You could run for
sometimes.
president to kick off our alumni speakers.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Mr. Waller. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. Thanks for the intro. It's really exciting to be here 10 years later, and you know, it's sort of weird standing up at the front of the classroom instead of being out there, but it's really good. So I want this to be as helpful for all the students as possible. So you know, if anyone has any questions about you know, anything, this is going to be mostly about my NGO, but you know, if you have questions about my career in finance or you know, going to a small liberal arts school, you're more than welcome to ask them. Okay, so basically I just did a timeline of my past 10 years, and I was hoping to just you know, describe what I've done, where I've been, and how I've done things over the past 10 years. I graduated in 2002, and then I went to Roanoke College, like Mrs. Taylor said. I studied finance and econ there, and then I went out to Philadelphia and I worked for an investment company called Lincoln Investment Planning. There I was a business analyst for a while, where I was basically an internal consultant. I would look at operations and efficiencies, point them out, and then also I would do trainings for the company whenever there was a new technology rollout. So during that time period, like towards the end, I was really loving my job, but I also realized that I wanted to do something a little bit different, something outside of the box. So decided to do a little research about you know, NGOs and stuff, and eventually I went down in March of '09 and did a little research, looked at what the need was down there, and looked for regions that were really that would really benefit from having a nonprofit presence down there. So we did a little research, and we found out that there was a big need for microlending down there. Microlending is a really great movement. It's done wonders around the world, but down there was this movement called the No Pago movement, where it was backed up by the government. Essentially, people stopped paying because they were charging, like, there was no legislation then, so they were charging like 70–80% interest in some cases. So people revolted essentially, and then they stopped paying their loans. So we came up with the idea of providing zero interest loans, right? So essentially there would be no reason for them to not repay their loans, and this would also be very helpful for the bottom of the pyramid individuals. So we decided to do that. May of 2010, we issued our first microloans, and we had a group of 17 people. It was a great group. And now they've all repaid, and some of them have started, some of them are on our board down there to review our new loans. It's really a great experience. And now we have over 130 loans out. We're hoping to add another 70 by the end of the year. So we'll have 200 in the Granada area, and then we're also going to move to another city. It'll be our first major expansion. So just to give you a quick overview of Nicaragua, it's the most impoverished country on the American mainland. It's only second behind Haiti in the Western Hemisphere. Basically, each individual lives on about $4 a day, a little bit less than $4 a day. 45% of those individuals, though, live below the poverty line. So this is a food poverty line. So basically what they do is they determine there's 2,200 calories is like the average that you would need to survive. So they look at how much it costs to buy 2,200 calories worth of food. And 45% of those individuals live below that. And just from a geographical standpoint, it's located right in the center of Central America. So it's really close to us. It's only 2,000 miles away. So, I mean, they're more of our neighbors than the West Coast. All right, so here's a shot of one of the communities where we work. It's called Nueva Esperanza. Communities sort of range between 80 and 200 families. Some have local government, some don't. But the biggest deal is that they're anywhere between half an hour to an hour and a half away from the city. So it's not really efficient for them to walk all the way into the city and all the way back out. That's like half the day for some people. Here's a close-up of a typical home. Gioconda and her family are in this picture. You can see all the rusted tin and plastic. This was all scavenged from the junkyards, right? So you pay $2 or $3, you go inside of the junkyard, and then you collect whatever you can. But a lot of people are doing this, and it's super dangerous. Like there are trash slides all the time, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully they can start building the concrete and stuff with the loan from us. Here's a picture of the Granada market. It's a really unconventional economy compared to what we're used to, right, here in the States. I mean, 40% of the economy is supported by self-employed individuals. Versus here, there's only 7.5%. So it just gives you an idea of like how many people are entrepreneurs down there. They've been doing this stuff for about 20 years, and their parents have probably done the same thing, sold the same thing. So this really makes Nicaragua a very good place to start a microloan program. First of all, very low initial investment. It's like our loans only range between $50 and $400. So here, think about starting a business. It's going to cost you 10 grand at least to start it. So I mean, it's really low risk, really low startup costs. Also, we have low overhead there. Because we're so far away from the city, the communities where we're working, we don't really need a physical office downtown. Like, people don't want to walk an hour and a half to make a loan repayment, right? So we can actually save a lot of money and a lot of time for the individuals by working out in their communities. Also, like I said before, 40% self-employed. So there's a huge skilled client base, at least skilled at what they're working at. They've all been running these companies for a very long time. And it's located right in the center of Central America. They've got a booming economy south of them, Costa Rica, Panama, and they have these trade agreements that allow for really cheap goods to come into the country from the U.S. and everywhere else. So there's basically 5 pieces to the puzzle of how we do things. First step is to inform the community. So we talk with other NGOs, we talk with other government groups, and we try to find out where there's an area with the most need and who have the most cooperative individuals and are the most organized. And so when we find that out, we go out to the area and we sort of get a feel for it ourselves. We just go around and talk to people, try to figure out what the income levels are for those individuals, and then if we like what we see, then we'll have a big meeting. These meetings are huge. They're anywhere between 50 and 400 individuals will come out, and half of them don't even care about the program. They just are interested to hear like what the heck is going on. So it's cool. It's a neat time where like kids can play together and like the parents can talk and stuff. So anyway, if they are interested in our program, then we ask them to turn in a sheet of paper that just tells us their name, where they live, and sort of like a rough overview of like what business plan they have. So we take those papers and we go to each of their houses, or we'll have a group interview, and we do like an extensive questionnaire asking them, like what they want to do with their business, what their income is, all that good stuff, like what their education levels are, and we try to determine whether, 1, there's a need, they have a need, 2, whether their business plan is going to work, and 3, if they're likely to repay, if they care about the program and they're really interested in repaying. So then, if they are approved, basically that involves a good business plan, their references check out, and their income is less than $2 a day. Then we distribute the funds. And what we do is we group people into about 10-person groups, and we distribute the money to everyone in that group together. And same thing, they repay together as a group. And so they become like this micro group within their community, and they become leaders of their community essentially. 4th step is the investment, obviously that comes out of the distribution. Here you can see Maria invested in a small pulperia. It's like a little community shop, right? So she's about an hour outside of Granada. So now her community members can actually just go directly to her and purchase, instead of having to go all the way an hour into town and all the way an hour back. Right, and then finally, the last step is the repayment process. Most important step, right? Because if they don't repay, then other people in their community can't receive. And it's important, and there's community pressure, but also like they really want to repay. They realize they're very, very thankful that they're getting an opportunity to invest in this business and make their business better. And so they want their neighbors to have the same opportunity, and they want us to stay in their communities. So basically, if you have a program, it doesn't really matter facilitate it, it matters like what happens afterwards, right? Like what the results are. So we've had like almost every single person that we've worked with has seen some incremental change, like whether it's they put in a latrine, or they put in a floor, or they started sending their kids to school for the first time, you know. And then we have the all-stars too. These people, like, they lived in a tin shack like the one that you saw. Now they bought a huge plot of land, and now they have, you know, cement walls up and a nice indoor bathroom and all these things, you know. So we have a big range, but compared to their neighbors that haven't had the opportunity yet, they're just doing great. Additionally, they're stronger communities. Our groups are really neat. There's very low pressure. We don't go around like, first of all, we don't require collateral. So like no one's nervous that we're gonna come and like rip the shingles off their wall or take their bed or whatever, you know, like other banks do. So I mean, really, people feel very comfortable to come out and they just, it's a time for everyone to share business ideas, to share about their families and everything else. We're also creating microeconomies out there. Basically, like I said a couple of times, you know, some of these people live 2-3 hours outside of the city, round trip, and you know, we have this one area that has a dentist, a bread maker, you know, a couple of small stores, a clothing store, just like all of these things, people that sell wood. So like now there's this whole microeconomy outside, so they don't have to be a part of this Granada economy. And then finally, the access to credit. Like I said, these people would not be able to go into a bank and take out loans for two reasons. One, they don't have collateral, and two, their loans are too small. What they need right now, they can't even get from a bank because it's too expensive for them to facilitate it. So that's the most important thing, that we're providing these people with credit so that they can actually raise themselves out of poverty instead of just depending on aid for the rest of their lives. And with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions.
First of all, really awesome. But so if you're not charging any interest, there's no where are you getting the funds? Like send people there by air, print off what they're printing off, and do the
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, look, I want to talk a little bit more about the reason why we went with 0% interest. So, like I said before, the usurious rates were just like crushing individuals, and really they were just in this perpetual cycle of, even in the microlending world, perpetual cycle of lending or borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and never really making that incremental step. So we decided with the 0% interest, we could really we would probably charge like 15% interest. That's what we have to ask our donors to cover to refund these loans. So essentially, that 15% is the difference we've seen between them succeeding and moving outside of poverty and staying within that cycle.
These are business loans, but it also sounds like sometimes they're used for personal, family expenses. Is there a muddy area, or do you not really get into that?
There's a muddy area. Yeah, it's very tricky because, like you said, a lot of people might just take the loan, and I mean maybe their grandma's sick and they need to send them to the hospital, right? So we completely understand that. But we put in a little twist, like where you get half of your loan initially, you show us that you've invested in it, and then you can receive the second part. So that was an issue initially, and we saw that that people had a tougher time repaying when they didn't invest fully into their business initially.
Second question, given the amounts that you're lending, is this a cash exchange? I mean,
Cash exchange. Yeah, and we're really safe about it. Like we have security, things like that. But yeah, it's all distributed in local currency. Yeah.
What type of repayment schedule do you give these people? Is it all just very flexible?
It's rather flexible. We give anywhere between 3 months and a year to repay, and they actually get to decide, because some people, you know, they have 8 kids or something, and so they want to take a little bit longer to repay and invest in their business and, you know, all that stuff. But some people are just like, give me 3 months, I'll repay it. And we also have a process where if you repay well, then you get to re-enter the program and request a larger amount.
Do you ever have to do bartering or anything and taking any of their goods or services if they can't?
No, we're trying to be a purely philanthropic organization. That's the difference between, like, there's a lot of for-profit microlending groups, And so the thing is, we've had a 1.5% default rate. So I mean, almost every single 2 people haven't been able to repay. You know, so it's really it's minuscule, and even those people are trying to repay right now. So yeah.
What kind of organizations do you go through? Are you involved with other local social organizations like churches and things like that that are really similar working with UC, or are you purely
we work with a wide range of organizations. Lots of times we'll work with the local health organizations. Or government groups. They typically have the best statistics on what's going on in the community. But we also work with other education nonprofits, healthcare nonprofits, all these different groups, just to get an idea of. I mean, pretty much everyone says the same areas when it all comes is all said and done. But for instance, we're moving to the northern region, to Nicaragua, and we work with this women's nonprofit group, and we're working about an hour and a half from the city. So we're sharing travel expenses and things like that, and we're working in a more rural area.
Who are your donors to this? Are they big companies? Are they small donations? Are they churches? I mean, who's stateside is supporting this?
Yeah, purely stateside right now. We have a few Europeans that do that, but yeah, for the most part, it's individual donors. So we have a pretty. I mean, our donor base is growing very quickly, but you know, we probably have about 200, 250 donors right now. And then we've also had a couple of like great grants given to us from different organizations. Nothing huge, maybe $1,000, $2,000 here, but yeah, I mean, it's really all about the donors, the individual donors.
Talk about that, the fundraising side a little bit. I know about it a little
Yeah,
more,
sure.
but as far as what you've been doing, because you've been doing a lot of stuff.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, last year we had an incredibly small budget, only $30,000. Most of that was raised through a fundraiser. We do a big New Year's Eve fundraiser, and then individual donors. This year we did a cross-country speaking tour where we talked at a bunch of churches, and we increased our donor base by about 40%. And at that point, like, I mean, we were giving sermons and weird stuff, you know, like crazy stuff like that. Yeah, it was a really neat experience though. And we also have one more fundraiser that funds our stuff from the mine. So.
Have you had any success with federal money? State funded or
Right. So basically, for the first 2 years, we worked through a fiscal sponsor, which essentially we use their 501c3 to raise funds. We just in the past maybe 7-8 months received our 501c3. So that's now we can start applying for federal grants. And you can apply for federal grants through fiscal sponsorships, but it's much more difficult.
Sorry, I missed the first part. You may have already answered this question. But are the people who work in this organization volunteers, or are they salaried?
We have 2 salaried stateside workers. Me and one other person. We get paid modest wages, $9,000 a year. So very modest wages. Yeah. It's a lot tougher than you know, my finance income, but no, like we just wanted all the money to go into the organization as much as possible in the first few years, so that we can make it sustainable, make it work, and then move from there.
So what do you estimate your overhead costs? What percentage?
It's tricky because like we do fundraising and you know, facilitation of everything, but like we estimate less than 10% of our costs are administrative costs.
What's the long range? Where do you see in 5 years, 10 years? And would you stay focused on Nicaragua? Would you hope to add another country? Well, I mean, where can you see this going?
Sure. The goal is by the end of this coming year, we'd like to be in about 3 cities in Nicaragua and see if it's sustainable. Matagalpa is our first test. We'll find out in January how it goes. If it is scalable, then we would like to try to move to another Latin American country by the end of 2013. So, I mean, and obviously, depending on the funding and things like that, we can move much more rapidly or much slower. So.
Has safety been a concern?
Sure. Safety is always a concern, but Nicaragua is really safe. It's really safe, especially for a Latin American country. It's very, very safe. You always have to be careful, especially with the money, the transport of money and things like that. You just have to be extra careful, but luckily